It's Law and Love once again. I'm Mark Breyer. That's Alexis Sapphire Breyer. She is the law in the law, and she's the love in the love. She's pretty much this whole podcast, and my job, as it is pretty much everywhere in my life, is to just stand next to her and let her do the work. You ready for today's show?
I'm ready. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Today is going to be a lot of fun, but I'm a little bit concerned about today's guest because I'm not really sure we should even introduce the topic of divorce to you, because what if you start going, why do I really need him anymore?
True, but I'll still need you.
Listen, I think maybe the most honest thing we could do is explain to people that you have been giving me a countdown on the number of years I'm guaranteed left, and after that, I have to earn it.
That is a little bit misleading. You have to earn like starting at year one, but once the kids get to college and above, then you have to like really, really earn it. I will have to ask our guests, the divorce lawyers, what they think about that. But I do really think it's this phenomena that once all the kids are out of the house, the wife wants a divorce.
Well, that seems to be true of a lot of people you grew up with.
True.
And what people may not realize when I threw that reference out there is that around the time our youngest hit about 5th grade, you were like, Mark,
you got 10 more years,
yeah, you got
buddy.
10 years left, and now it's 9, and then it's 8, and every year you're like, you better make sure you're taking care of me.
You're down to 5 now.
Because I'm really not needed.
You got to step up your game.
I really don't bring enough value to this relationship, apparently.
Well, you'll have to like make all the flights for us to go visit all the kids.
That's it? That's all I got to do to stay
you
around?
Gotta, like do some value.
Be your travel agent?
Yes.
As the kids move away?
Yes. Take care of the dog. That's like the perpetual toddler.
To be honest with you.
Actually, you did that this morning. Breslin was at our door at like what? 4, 5 a.m., like a little toddler.
Right.
And you went and you got her. Because I'm like sleeping, like pretending I'm sleeping. But of course, I'm not sleeping. I'm like, is he going to go get that dog? Or like, what is going on? And you did. And you even like lifted her up into the bed so she could sit on my head, basically.
The longer we're together, the more I realize our entire marriage is me being set up. Generally to fail.
It's not really being a setup.
You were laying there right now this morning going, let's see if he's good enough. I had no idea I was being set up and tested.
You should add that to the things you do. You wake up or get up to get Breslin when she's at the door at 4 in the morning.
She woke me up.
She did wake you up?
Yeah,
Yeah,
she woke
I
me
feel
up.
bad because I was already up. I should have gone to the door. But
then
you're like, it's the middle of the night and you're like, or 4 in the morning, whatever. You're so tired and you're just like, do I really need to go get up to get the dog? And when you can just wake up and go get the dog. You did a good job. Thank you.
I just feel very excited that I started the day not failing, which is how I start so many days. All right.
That's a win. If Breslin's ever at the door at 4 or 5 in the morning and you wake up and go get her and put her on my head so that she can go back to sleep, that's basically what she does, go to my head, then that's a win. That's like you're starting off like a point ahead.
On the other hand, just consider this.
Yes.
What you're going to find out today is if I ever totally fail you, to the degree you're like, he's just not worth it.
Yes.
You don't have to regular divorce me. You could easily, in one afternoon, divorce me. You could be done with me like that.
I could divorce you in a day.
In a day. Divorce in a day. Done with Mark in one day. Probably be the smoothest day you've ever had. And I'd be there hanging on because I'm way too in love to even continue this joke.
The kids would be really mad at me, though.
Why'd you stay with them? The kids would be kind of upset.
They would. They'd be upset.
All right. Without further ado, we're going to jump into a totally different topic than we normally, and it's law and love. Because when you think about divorce or
That's
divorce
like
in a day,
ultimate law.
it is
love.
law and love and a lot of other stuff going on. All right, let's have some fun. So what are the horror stories that someone who's lived through? There is an 82% chance statistically that it's someone who's gone through a divorce, and the divorce process was worse than the divorce itself for so many people. We have Kate and Chris here, and they're going to tell you, we're going to get into all kinds of cool stories about people and going through divorce, but we're also going to talk about this unique, I don't know if it's unique. Is it a unique concept?
Yeah. Very
divorce in a day?
Mm-hmm.
This is not being done everywhere? You guys have like created the model that other people are going to try to emulate but can never totally replicate?
I hope that they do. It's a great process. And as far as I know, we're the only firm in the Valley in the state that does it.
All right. And we're going to hear about then a new way of potentially people going through this horrible, terrible, life-changing situation, making it a little bit less terrible. And I'm guessing that off camera, Steve is getting up to tell you to tell Chris to move the mic so close, it seems like it's way too close. And then that's when it's even closer than that. You want to lift it all the way up so it seems ridiculous. Now you're there. That's perfect. There you go.
Thank you.
Am I right about that? Look at that. I'm a pro. We've been at this we just started. All right. So before we get into the gist of everything, this is my favorite question for people because someone asked it to me. For the two of you, what's your story?
Oh, great question. Well, it all started in Miss Sheely's homeroom in 5th grade.
That's where it usually starts.
Yeah, exactly. That's where most love stories start. Yeah. No, Kate and I, we met in grade school, 5th grade, and we're really good friends throughout high school. I got my license pretty early on, so we kind of grew up on the same country mile. I picked her up for high school. We stayed really good friends and started dating right after we graduated from high school.
All right, so let me just stop you there. You've known each other since grade school.
Nearly forever, yeah.
You're picking her up, but you're not dating until after grade. Was that a rule in one of the houses you guys were in? Why weren't you dating starting at like 16 or 12?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think Kate probably realized before I did we were a good match, but really I think we were good friends, and that really kind of serves as an awesome basis for our relationship now.
People say that, but is that true, really?
100%. It really is, yeah. I mean, we'd hang out. I remember going, after school, we'd hang out, all our friends. You go to the little local diners, hang out on the weekends. And then we started kind of just going to the graduation parties more and more, and everybody's kind of heading their own directions. And we were both going to college in Milwaukee. And yeah, I didn't want the summer to end.
And it hasn't.
No. Nope. It's been amazing.
It's been awesome. A party ever since.
Awesome trip. We're going on like 20 years together. It's really cool.
It's true that I knew before Chris.
But you didn't tell him.
That's right.
Because
I waited patiently, and luckily, after my 18th birthday, he asked me out on a real date. A real date before social media, before any of those things. We went out on a real date, out to dinner. He taught me to water ski. I taught him to ride a horse. We had a really, really good, those teenage years were fun. And it was the basis. That's a good question, and people ask us that. Should you be friends? Does that make a good relationship? Should you not? For us, it's worked.
Do you think we should have been friends?
You two met in law school?
Yeah. We met in law school.
She still doesn't consider me a friend.
Well, I mean, you guys were younger. I mean, we were still young. We were 22.
Met you at 22.
Yeah, but at the time I met, I wasn't looking for a friend. I was looking for a husband. So I had
And I was looking to stay single, so it was a perfect fit.
Yeah. I was just kind of processing that through my head, like, should we have been friends? But that wouldn't have worked with my timeline. As it was, I wasted a year of dating and being friends. So yeah.
Alexis,
but maybe if we met at 18, it would have been different.
Let me make a prediction. You two run a very successful business. You have how many children together?
8.
Whoa, we have 8?
Yeah, 4 and 4. Plus the
that's a
dog.
lot.
Plus the dog.
Yeah. The dog's the toughest.
The dog's the toughest.
The dog that
Yes.
requires attention.
Oh, man.
A lot of attention.
You do this day in and day out. I can guarantee you're friends.
Or enemies. I'm just kidding.
Listen, this is like most of the things in our marriage. Like, I always had this issue, though, with the whole friend thing.
Yes.
Because a lot of people are like,
we're aligned on
she's
this.
my best friend. Da, da, da. She is the most important person in my life in every way. And I'm in her top 10. And so, and I'm good with that, right? Like you guys may not know this song, but it's an old song by the Jay Giles band that Love Stinks. And it goes, you
guys know that
love
song?
her, but she loves him and he loves somebody else. You just can't. Anyway, that's my life. I love her, but she loves the kids. And then the kids are falling in love with other people. And that's really our life. But so I have a core group of friends that have been my friends, and I consider them friends. What I consider Alexis is something totally different, way bigger, way better. But I know I'm in a minority on this, right? Like most people would go, well, if you trust the person more than anyone else, and you care about them more than anyone else, and you love them more than you can put into words, and you need them in the healthiest way you can use that word, like, then you're friends. But
Usually they say best friends. Do you guys
Best
say
friends.
like we're best friends?
I don't think almost ever. I suppose it's true,
Yeah.
but
Some people say that.
I think
a lot.
most people
like,
would
we're
agree with
best
that.
friends. But-
Look, it's probably like a distinction without a difference. But
Yes.
my friends and I don't know what we do together, actually. I was going to say what my friends and I do together.
Watch football.
We argue about stuff.
Watch football. And watch football.
No, there's basketball. There's still college basketball.
Probably
I don't know
talk
what
about
my
your
friends and I do.
wives. I don't know.
That's true. Some of my friends have a couple of my good friends got married. Several of my friends got married before us. And many of them stayed married for decades without even talking to their spouses.
Literally.
Literally, they didn't know where the other they didn't know where they were.
They
So
lost their spouse for decades.
but they stayed married as far as they
Yes,
knew.
they're still married.
And that's a way you can avoid expensive divorce lawyer costs. Just go your separate ways, but never actually get a divorce. Have you guys ever considered pushing that?
a lot of the inquiries we have for our mediation program, just like the cold calls, will be, I haven't seen my spouse in 10 years. How fast can I divorce them? And it's always
Exactly.
like, wow, how does that happen? It does.
It is great. Well, one, they lost touch, and another one of my close friends, they absolutely stayed in touch, but they never got a divorce for so long that I didn't even know. I actually do not know if they're one of my closest friends. I don't know if they're still married or not, because they have a kid together. They still see each other, but I don't know if they've ever gotten
It's
a
just
divorce.
the technicality.
It's a non-traditional
and
way of
probably
handling
because
it.
people think it's so expensive to get a divorce.
That's absolutely correct.
know?
We get those calls a lot. I haven't seen them in so long because it's an overwhelming process and it's expensive. The premise that you started with talking at the introduction is also true, and I'm not going to refer to you two about this, but people who wait for the kids to be out of the house, very common.
No, she's waiting. How many days I got left?
Well, I mean, I think there's something about it that everybody knows, right? I mean, I think once you hit like a certain age, maybe it's just a thing. Like, I think it really is more of a woman thing, but I don't know.
That's
but
what I was
think
gonna ask Kate.
It's just everybody, you just hear so many, like, because we actually, because we have 8 children, we have, there's 14 years difference. So a lot of our friends, like their kids have been out of the house, we saw it. Like as soon as their youngest turned 18, they were like, I'm gone, So whereas for us, we still have, thank goodness, we still have some kids that are still in
Meanwhile,
the house.
note from one of the colleges one of our kids went to, for those parents out there who are waiting for their kids to leave before they get a divorce. Apparently, a lot of parents break this news when the kid is on their way to orientation for college or their first weekend in college. And the thing that was put out by the whatever Office of Student Life, I don't remember which school, was like, you've waited this long, pick a better time than right before, give them some time to process it before you send them off to this major change in life. But I was going to ask you guys, so I don't know anyone that's done it, but a lot of the people
Because your
that
friends don't know
yeah,
where
they don't
their
get
wives
divorced.
are.
Yeah.
Or they've been married a really long time.
Same difference. Either way,
True.
successful. So, so do you guys find it's usually the wife who's wanting the divorce when the kids go to college, or is that just all her friends or people she knew?
I think Alexis is correct.
Yeah.
And that's based on anecdotal, my consult chair only, and I've been doing this 14 years now. I would agree. I think that it's more women than men that feel they lose their identity in raising children and they've grown apart and they're struggling and they are waiting. And it's also a lot of women that I see that say, here are all the issues. And once they look at their financial picture for the next 10 years, if their kids are in high school or a little before to make their plan, they decide to stay because financially it can be very difficult. And I hear that a lot. Okay, I'll wait until the kids are stable and out of the house and I'll see you in 5 years.
We had a friend like that. She waited, I think she knew around the time the kids were like 6. I'm not kidding.
They were in like 5th and 6th grade, and she was like, when he turns 18, I'm out. And she did.
was.
She waited the entire time. That seems like a really long time to wait, though, if you're not happy. Like to plan it where you're going to wait that long until the kid's out of the house. But I do agree with you. I mean, the financial part, it allows women to stay at home if they want to, or, just to, I don't know.
Money's good. I found it's very helpful for food and shelter.
Clothing.
Clothing's good. Clothing's good.
Mark usually puts those together. Food, clothing,
Food,
shelter.
clothing, shelter.
You
I
got
just-
food, clothing, shelter, child. You're good.
This is me to my kids.
That's all you need.
I need such and such. No, you need food, clothing, shelter. You have that. So this is want. Can we have a discussion about want and need? Before we get into all the divorce stories and how you guys created what you created, which is this, in my view, from my non-experienced, very limited view into others, a very cool thing you guys are doing. What's it like to work together? How did that happen? Because I don't see how a husband and wife could ever work together.
We have heard from 99.9% of friends and colleagues that ask the same question and say they could never do it. And I don't see that side of it. It's been seamless. Running a law firm, as you know, has a lot of administrative tasks. One of us runs the trust account, one of us does the expenses and bookkeeping, and we split all those things. It's been a complete success. It's been great. I won't say it's because we're friends.
No, you could be friends. It's just our own take. And by the way, Chris, I have an idea for you.
Oh, great.
We can talk about, but just to plant the seed. Instead of you guys splitting it, just have her do everything. That's what I do, and it's way easier.
Yeah, you just have to let the dog out.
Yeah, you just let the dog out,
Yeah.
and then have Kate do everything. That's what I do with Alexis. It's been fantastic.
Why do you think I did so well through grade school and high school? Okay. Those rides weren't free. Here's my
Right.
paper. Let's go.
So, but you guys have. It's not been when people ask you, and I'm sure you get asked because we do a lot over the years. Like, how do you do it? Are there? All right, let me ask you this: Is there anything about working together that's harder than what you thought when you started doing it?
It's all easier and better.
I think, yeah, there was a couple bumps before, but I think what really helped is when you start a business, right? You're sharing expenses, money's going out the window like, no other, and you each have strengths. And I think what we did is allowed ourselves to kind of focus on what it is we wanted to do with the firm, and it really, really streamlined our communication. Like there were times in the beginning where it's like, all right, we need to not focus so much on the problem. Let's figure this out like business people instead of husband wife. And I think that has transferred into our personal relationship too. So it really has streamlined communication from my perspective.
So you don't have an issue where, and this is just hypothetical. This has nothing to do with my experience, but like 10, 11 at night, midnight, you just want to go to bed. You don't want to talk about it anymore. And Kate's trying to talk to you about a client or someone at the outlet. I mean, that's never happened to me, but that's never happened to you?
The answer to that question is it doesn't really happen to us because I think are very receptive to what each other needs, right? And I may have
I
watched
just don't care.
I may have watched a podcast before about maybe men have different emotional needs and women are from Venus and we have
Right.
no idea what's going on at all, right?
I thought you were going to say, and we have no idea where men are from,
Oh, yeah.
but
I mean,
that's close enough.
but it is, I mean, it is interesting that I think most spouses can say to each other, if they don't feel like talking about what happened at work, one spouse goes, hey, how was work? What happened? And the other spouse can go, it was fine. Nothing happened. Not because nothing happened, because they're not ready to talk about it. But when you work together, as the four of us do, right? You guys work together, we work together. I can't come home and go, nothing happened, because she'll go to me and go, hey, you had that meeting with this person about this issue. What came of it? So there is no, there's no avoiding it. If I'm trying a case and come back, she knows I'm trying a case. But, back before when I was doing all the litigation of a firm, she would go, what did the judge say about this motion? And, there was no way to avoid it. The truth is, I tend to agree with what sounds like is your experience, which is, at least for us, and I don't think it is for everyone, but for us, working together, the tough times, we're going through them together. And in running a small business and a law firm, there's tough times. And so there's way more positive than negative. But the joke I was making is my one negative. My one negative is there are many times where it's already bouncing around. I don't want to talk about it. And Alexis wants to talk about it. And so, you know what we do? We talk about it.
I think sometimes that does happen to us where, you're allowed to say what you want. And sometimes I just don't want to talk about the firm or what's next or what we got to spend or what we got to do your advertising dollars on. And sometimes I'll just say, you know what, right now I don't want to talk about the firm. And we go our separate ways. And she's very respectful of that. And I like to think I'm an all right listener too when it is time to chat and compartmentalize those things.
Sometimes the downside is the upside. Like in most businesses that are partners, one partner is going to want to be more aggressive with growth than the other, right? The chances of total alignment at all times is virtually zero. So the downside is, well, now you and your spouse are one wants to be more aggressive and one wants to hold back or whatever the situation is. But that's also the positive, right? Like, in the end, the ability to communicate, the ability to go through it, it makes it harder, I suppose, but really it's just better, because otherwise the partner goes home to their life, you go home to their life, and you're not working through it. You're not working it out. And, and of course, in our case, we pretty much just do what Alexis wants anyway. So that's a really good plan. If just Alexis, we do what she wants. And then she later will tell me, you knew I was right the whole time. So there's that way of doing it.
Well, we have the benefit of, on a daily basis, being bombarded with spouses who treat each other badly. So we see all the don'ts all the time. And it makes me think pretty regularly about communicating well, which is probably the downfall of most marriages that head towards dissolution, is poor communication. And I'll give you an example. It was Chris who wanted to be more aggressive with some social media and starting our TikTok account, which we did 3 years ago, which I don't even have a personal TikTok account, and I did not want to do that. And we talked through it, and I had to say he was right. It's been fun. And so that's a good example. But other than that, we're on the same page and talking about it. And it does help when you see people who really don't like each other every day as an example of that's not how we want to live.
So first of all, I find it amazing. It speaks something to how you guys see the world, that hearing people going through these tough times, you guys use it not as a way to drag you down, but as a way to see what you can learn from, right? Because I'm sure it has dragged many lawyers who handle divorce down, because it's so sad to see, that when people go through a divorce, it is often, I think, the hardest time of their life. So much was invested in this marriage. They truly wanted it to work. They were deeply in love. And all of a sudden, now you're on the other side for whatever reason. And this life that you've pictured is not there. To see that and be able to take the positives. So let me ask you guys a question that you weren't ready for. So now that you have seen probably a lot of really good people, and I don't just mean your clients, both clients, because often good people marry good people, right? But something went wrong along the way. If from what you've seen, if you were talking to two people and they were thinking about getting married and they were like, all right, what do I need to know? What questions am I supposed to be asking of this boyfriend, girlfriend, fiance, whatever? What would you guys say to them?
Number one, I think our society doesn't do a very good job of teaching young people to talk about how they're going to run their finances. And it is probably 80% of people in their middle age, say 40s, where one spouse has no idea how the banking accounts are run, financial, who's going to make the money, how are you going to handle things, how are you going to handle inheritance, how are you going to handle all these things, where do you want to live? And kids, which is easy to consider, but I'm not sure people talk about whether or not they want to have kids before they get married. I don't think people should be afraid of prenuptial agreements. Premarital agreements. There's nothing wrong with doing that. And
is it too late for her to get a prenup?
Way too late.
Okay, good. Right.
Way too late.
Too late.
And I think people don't date long enough. That's what I would, mostly people in their 20s, right? Is that who you've been dating 1 or 2 years when you're in your 20s and people want to have children and people want to start a family and they say, okay, this is the person, without really reflecting on, what is 20-year-old Mark going to say to 40-year-old Mark? There's no way you're going to be the same person.
20-year-old Mark was an idiot.
You just got lucky.
So is 40-year-old Mark. But I think I was less of an idiot.
No, and I mean, that is kind of a huge component of it. Is I think people, you get excited about the party and the wedding and the rings and the like next chapter. But there really isn't a rush from my perspective. If you're going to be together forever anyway, what's the rush into marriage? And I think there's a lot of people who've never been stranded on the side of the road with a flat tire to realize like what's going to happen in that dynamic. And something so simple can cause, the biggest of arguments. And I think we dated for 7.5 years before we got married. And we went through all that stuff, like the simple things, driving through a snowstorm to a ski hill to put your ski boots on when you don't have the right boots because you bought two left instead of two the right feet. And it's just going through those experiences to make sure you understand
really
who it is you're marrying.
Did one of you have two left boots?
We've been held up. Before we got married, we were held up at gunpoint in Panama by the Panamanian police. We'd been around the world twice. Like we had done, Yeah, I knew who I was marrying for sure.
Same.
So before you propose, get held at gunpoint together. Because nothing will bring out more of who you are and how you handle adversity more than being held at gunpoint
Exactly.
in a foreign country by the police.
I'm super chill. Nobody got shot, and I got to keep all my property without paying a bribe because I could speak a little broken Spanish. So same would hold true today, I hope.
I was so impressed. I was beyond impressed, and I was ready to hand over the camera and everything we had, and Chris just handled it. It's like, all right.
Wow.
That's scary, though.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And he didn't look scared. I was like,
Were you scared?
Not really, no. No, I mean, they look like the legit cops, so I didn't think they look... They were the legit cops.
Once you looked over the barrel of the gun and, past they look good.
Yeah, we were in Panama, and they drive some pretty souped-up cop cars down there. So it's a pickup truck, and they got like a big gun mounted to the top of it. And I thought, oh, cool truck. And it was all right when the first cop got out of the passenger door, but then there's 4 doors, so 4 people pile out, and then 4 more out of the back of the truck, and it's like, ooh, this was a simple traffic violation, I thought.
Right. It's a whole gang.
Yeah. But, that's one of those dynamics where who is your spouse gonna be in that situation? How are they gonna react? Are you sure you want to be with them forever?
So you've known each other since you were kids. He finally got around to understand it was time to start dating. You dated for not a hot second. You dated for a while. Now you're finally married. Your law school's there. And now you're like, let's do divorce. Whose idea was that?
so that was mine because we stayed in Wisconsin at the beginning of our career, and I worked for a family law firm there, and I had done family law throughout my whole career. And Chris worked for the prosecutor's office. This is in Racine, Wisconsin. And that held us over and was wonderful until we decided that Wisconsin weather was not going to be our long-term plan. And we retired.
Can't imagine why.
Negative 51 degrees. That's why. I will not forget.
We were in Wisconsin actually this weekend. We got back yesterday, and the lake at the University of Wisconsin-Madison is beautiful right now in September.
Yeah, but Lake Mendota freezes over during the
Amazing
winter.
place to ice race those yachts. It's really cool. Have you ever seen that?
No.
But
The
when
ice
we
yachts?
were
Oh, yeah.
we were joking with my daughter, and we're like, she's like, it's beautiful here, amazing, and
it
we're
was.
like, and it was, and we're like, until it gets to winter, and she's like, yeah, but then it freezes over, and you can ice skate, and you can do all sorts of things. But as injury lawyers, all I could think about is, what if the ice isn't
What if it breaks?
frozen enough and it breaks, and
Maybe we've been doing this too long.
Yes.
So now you're leaving Wisconsin, but there are family law jobs and criminal jobs in Arizona too. But you made the switch at that point.
Well, first we put Chris's captain's license to good use, and we lived on a boat in Key West for 1.5 years.
What?
that's
And
fun.
we decided that was the last time if we were going to come to Arizona and set up shop. There was one last hurrah to be had, and we did that. And we had a fantastic time.
That's amazing.
It was amazing.
You literally, your home was the boat.
Our home was the
What
boat.
if you had to get mail?
We had an address, and
700 Front Street, Slip 23. My favorite address ever.
that was a good address. We both got jobs, like fun jobs. Chris ran a parasail boat. I ran a jet ski pier. And it was funny. I had one opportunity for some young kids to come and read the liability waivers, and they're asking all these questions, and it's me in my jet ski outfit, and one of the girls goes, "Leave her alone. She's not a lawyer." And I was like, "Actually, I am. I'd be happy to go through all these things with you," and that was fun. And Chris did a lot of spear fishing. We did a lot of regular fishing, and
You know how to spearfish?
Oh, it's the most fun ever. Yeah.
And you actually caught fish, or you just know how to throw the spear and miss?
No, I'm a pretty good shot. I like catching lobsters too. Yeah, I love the Keys. Yeah. I'll tell you another thing. If another one of those tests you should go through is docking your boat with your spouse to see if you are meant to be long-term soulmates.
That's
'Cause if
actually
you can
the
make
only
it
test
through
we
that,
did.
you'll be fine.
It's that hard to dock the boat.
Not with the right people. Again, it's one of those communication things. It's the communication I think that's more important.
I'm
True.
Not, I'm
You're
not
like
so sure
giving
how-
the directions.
that's
Do
right.
this, do that, and then you have to see, like, are they listening?
I can't even drive the car with my wife
That is true.
because we'll be like 7 football fields away from a car that taps their brakes. She's like, slow down. You're too close.
Well, she's a personal injury lawyer. She's seen what
Yes,
happens when you
it's-
tailgate.
Exactly.
I'm like, dude, we can barely see the brake lights on that car that just got tapped. Slow down. So that had to be hard.
We were in a boat though, weren't we? In a boat in Florida. It wasn't a boat. It was like a paddle boat, sailboat. I can't remember. Weren't we in some kind of boat?
We were on one of those catamarans, right? Is it a catamaran? What are the ones that you drive around and they're just for hanging out?
You were the wasn't
I
it?
drove it. Yeah.
Yeah, and we were like going in the total wrong way.
We were
and
going
didn't we have to
exactly-
have somebody else come and rescue us or
We were
something?
going.
Pontoon sailboat.
A pontoon
sailboat.
is what I was thinking of,
Yes.
but you're talking about another time. One time it was a sailboat, which is fine because I did sailing for like a day and a half in summer
In
camp as a kid.
when you were 10.
So it was no problem. The story's misleading. What happened was I sailed out no problem because the wind was behind us. However, the wind was behind us. How am I supposed to get back against the wind? So I don't know how to do that. So yeah, eventually after not moving anywhere, they had to come tow us back in because
They came and got us.
our 2 hours of hell was up. And she's like telling me what to do. She doesn't know how to sail against the wind. She just knew I didn't know how to sail against the wind, which she was right. I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah, if you can't figure out the docking communication thing, then you can just call for help.
However, fortunately, we had been married for like 20 years at this point. So there was, again, the key. I would say this, it's interesting you say, date long enough, unless you are the lesser valued person in the potential marriage, which would be me, in which case marry as quick as you can so that she's stuck with you. So you just got to know who you are. If you know you're like an amazing partner, take your time. But if you know you're with an amazing partner and you're not worthy, get on a knee and propose if you're a guy and get it done with before she has time to consider it.
That's true.
I'm just saying, different plans depending. You just got to know your situation.
I'm just thinking kind of like you were running around at their age with like 2 kids and they were on a boat having fun, jet skiing.
Let me tell you something. The freedom you stole from me is not lost. I know full well that you making me get
I was
married
like, he's probably
and
not
getting
putting this
yourself
together.
pregnant right away repeatedly.
That was actually your idea.
Well, no.
He wanted to have kids right away. I was like, we can get married and then kind of go have fun for a couple of years. But he was
what
like,
fun. I was already married.
he was like, once you're married, you might as well just start having kids. So we just
And why did I want to start having kids?
so that we could be done earlier.
Yes. And then what'd you do?
Yeah, then we had lots more. But I'm just saying, I was going to have you have that plan, but you didn't want that plan, which was fine with me because I wanted a lot of kids anyway. So I was good with that plan. But you are the one who wanted to have kids right away.
Which one of you turned to the other one and said, let's leave paradise and go do regular jobs? Because whoever it is should be in a lot of trouble right now.
I think it was one of those days we pulled up the Chase statement and look at each other and go,
Oh,
time to go back to reality.
Once again, money has value, food, clothing, shelter, those kinds of things. So it was a joint decision because it was that time.
Yeah, we'd always planned to relocate to Arizona. I mean, really, we thought about, I was optimistic to do like 60 days cruising in the boat, come back, sell it on eBay, and live my big adventure. We really kind of got holed up in Key West waiting for some weather to clear over to the Bahamas. And
For a year and a half.
then she got a job the next day on the dock, and I'm like, well, if we're staying here, I might as well learn to drive one of these boats. So, yeah, it was great.
That's fun though, and an opportunity that once you're in your career, you can't really go
Ever
back
again,
to.
right.
So,
All right. So I have a question because I think a lot of people want to do right? Take time, not at some distant point in the future, but take time to enjoy life, appreciate it, right? We get one chance as far as I know, like let's enjoy it. But neither one of you had like this nagging feeling of I'm falling behind. I need to, the questions you get from relatives. When are you gonna use your law degree? You guys weren't getting harassed like that from people who loved you going, you're not following the traditional path, so let me give you a hard time.
You would have laughed. They wrote a little newspaper article about us in Racine. Every lawyer in town was like, do it. Go have fun. Live it up. The judges were all like, you guys are living the dream. Work will be here. It was like a big party.
Good for them.
Good for everybody. Our parents, everybody was like.
That speaks a lot because a lot of people are like, it's been painful for me. I want it to be painful for you because that's how it's supposed to be. But there is no supposed to be. And on top of that, what they said is true. you guys were lawyers and you had some experience, which means you can get a job. That day or a year and a half later, did you have any trouble finding work? Did anyone roll their eyes and go, whoa, you did what for a year and a half?
No.
I had to change my name on Facebook because I was applying to a few firms. I wasn't getting any leads for the first couple of weeks, and finally I got a letter back from one of them where they said, we appreciate your experience. Thanks for applying. I'm not sure you'd be a good social fit for our firm. And I thought, well, how would they know?
Right.
And I'm like, wait a minute. Well, here I am on a boat with a margarita. Oh, here I am on the beach with the margarita. Oh,
right.
Here I am at the end of the pier.
With a margarita.
With a margarita. Okay, I get it. Time to change my name. Like,
Right.
So yeah, that was about it. And then I ended up getting a really cool contract to work in drug court, which is something I was passionate about. And it was a good, easy transition. There wasn't much lag time between doing it. And like looking back, it was one of those times where I'm really glad that we kind of took that initiative to do it, because I almost think I was probably more terrified than most of the people encouraging you to go, right?
Right.
Because of all those lingering concerns. What happens when we do relocate? How long is this going to be? How much is it going to cost? All of those, like, don't do it. But now looking back, like, that's
What an amazing
epic
choice.
memory.
And so now at that point, you've always been in criminal or criminal related, right? Drug
Yeah.
court's clearly directly related to criminal. You've always been in family law. You get a family law job. And at some point, one of you turns to the other one and says, we could do this together. How did that happen?
That happened following one of the nightmare divorce cases that I had, that everybody knows someone who spent a boatload of money and fighting and interviewing the children and just court for 2 years. And it was really Chris who came up with the idea for Divorced in a Day. I worked at a firm in Scottsdale and saw pretty regularly just all the fighting and the money spent. And Chris said, hey, let's look back at the notes from kind of the start of one of these nightmare cases, and said, you could have done that in a day. It's very predictable what's going to happen with the money and the children, and Arizona's a no-fault state, as you know. And it developed into, there is a better way to get divorced, at least in the state of Arizona, and we can bring that to people.
Yeah, I remember exactly where we were, and it was one of those times where we were talking about work and results and stuff, right?
Right.
And I was listening to her tell me about the trial and what the judge's order said, and I'm like, well, that order seems pretty consistent with what I've been hearing you advocate for the last 2.5 years. Like, what gives? And I tend to be very pragmatic when it comes to bargaining in law, right? And in family court, it's a no-fault state. It's a community property state. So it's like, all right, well, let's put this out on the table and figure it out. It doesn't need to be this hard and this cutthroat. And these people could have sent their 3 kids to Harvard for the amount of money they paid fighting out their divorce and have almost the exact same results Kate predicted 2.5 years prior to this massive trial that drains you financially, pits you against each other, and makes you enemies. I mean, that's the first thing that happens. It's husband versus wife, or wife versus husband.
Right.
Put that versus in the equation, and it just amps everybody up, and it doesn't need to be that way.
We were talking before we came on together about, we have someone we're really close to, and when she went through a divorce, it looked like it was going to start amicably, is like this very legal term, but it was a terrible thing. It was a divorce. It came out of nowhere, basically. And so there was.
They probably spent $10,000 on the 25-year-old barbecue.
Not literally, but it
Literally,
was.
probably.
It was, but the very first letter, the two of them that were going to get a divorce, they had pretty much agreed that they wanted it done the right way. There wasn't. I'm sure there was anger that was going to naturally come because two people that have been married and have kids, but the first letter from the lawyer was a total departure from not only what the wife that we're super close with, but we knew him very well as well. Neither one of them would have written that letter, I don't believe. And yet it changed everything. It was immediately over the top. You're the worst person ever. All this stuff that theoretically should have nothing to do with divorce. But when you talk about Divorce in a Day, which requires people to actually trust the process or get along, I imagine people are kind of like, yeah, I don't want to go down this path of angry lawyer letters back and forth, but I'm afraid to not have someone on my side. How do you guys, I could be wrong, but I would think that's one of the fears people share.
It's one of the fears they share, and it's one of the fears that after we dispel, when we're in either the final mediation day or at the end of the process, they're looking back and saying, okay, now I see the big picture. And sometimes people need to have a friend or family member to bounce ideas off of. But when we do a divorce in a day case, we act as neutrals and can give them good information, answer their questions very straightforward, not in an adversarial way. And I'll tell you, after 14 years of doing this, these people can be nearly happy knowing that it could have been as bad as the case you're talking about and the case that started this all, where it is so much stress and so much money. And when we do this for contained cost, these are some of the happiest clients we've ever had in our whole careers.
They don't even know. I mean, in other words, if you could collect angry lawyer letters and divorces from around the country and share them with people who go through this, I mean, they know, because we've all, unfortunately, divorce is part of, I think I just read the other day, it's 42% of marriages. I don't know how they even come up with these numbers and whatever. I always heard 50, whatever it is. A lot, divorce is not uncommon. But for the people who have been through it or been really close to someone who's been through it, you realize just how a lawyer whose motivation is not, let's try to keep it ratcheted down. Let's be professional. Just turn to your client and say, I understand you're upset. Let me tell you where this person's probably coming from, as opposed to, wow, that person's evil. You're right. Let me write 9 letters back. And for what? In a no-fault state, you can write all the angry letters you want, and you've probably accomplished nothing other than attorney fees going through the roof, and 2 people who, if they have kids, have to see each other for the rest of their lives, forgetting that it all started with an intention of getting through it more easily.
I feel like so often, though, lawyers, they go into being adversarial. I mean, even I've seen a lot of injury lawyers who just, more blame the system or blame the other attorney. Like, they just go into blaming somebody. And I think once you start going into that more victim mentality, more blaming, then it seems more, it just makes everyone adversarial. It's like, just take accountability for where you're at, how the process works. Like, they're doing their job, we're doing our job, and this is how it's most likely going to be.
It is the cheap and easy way out for a lawyer. When the lawyer is in front of someone, if someone hires you in a litigation context, you guys in divorce and us in injury, they have a lot of reason to be upset, legitimate reason to be upset. And the easier thing to do is, when the client's in front of us upset, is to run with it and go, yes, you are the victim. This is unfair. This is horrible. No one should do what they're doing, right? What you see in our world is, yes, this insurance company is evil and they're taking advantage of you and they're taking advantage of the system. It is harder to look at the client and go, well, actually, you have every right to be upset. What they're doing is upsetting, but I want you to know something. What they're doing is what they're supposed to do, because their job is to make money. They're a multi-billion-dollar insurance company. They owe it to their insureds and their shareholders to do things a certain way and to fight. So I disagree with what they're doing. You disagree with what they're doing, but they're not evil for doing it. What they're doing is their job. And now I'm going to lead our job together, and we're going to fight back. And that is the harder thing to do. But I think most people want to hear the truth. And then they walk out going, okay, I'm really mad. And it's way worse. It has to be so much harder than what you guys do. But I'm really upset with this person who I'm already upset with, and I'm getting a divorce. But okay, what their lawyer's doing is playing this game, and I'm not gonna get myself drawn down there. But it's hard to have that conversation, right? To actually look at someone and go, you have a right to be upset, but let me tell you the other side of the story.
Absolutely. And when you see the handful of really bad opposing counsels that this is coming, you prepare them as best you can, keep people really centered and focused on, you have an emotional job to do that's really hard, because getting divorced is right there with losing a loved one, death, divorce, all those grief emotions are all the same. And so it's our job to make sure you get through this efficiently for as little money as possible, because you're dividing up family money. That's what we're doing. Paying the lawyers unnecessary money is really the driving force behind the Divorce in a Day program, but we do a lot of litigation. And so saying, okay, they hired a lawyer we work with a lot. There are lawyers that have a very conciliatory, resolution-minded focus, just like we do, a handful. And I love seeing them on the other side, and we get people great results, and everybody gets what's appropriate and for less money. And when you get those really tough other lawyers, it is a lot harder. You're right. Harder work to stay focused, be professional, and move them towards the best result possible.
And amping up those conflicting letters, and when one person becomes super, super aggressive, like you say, I never want to be on the courthouse steps trying to explain, like, we filed this petition because you told me to do it and you were super emotional and now you spent $15,000 and actually you owe the other side money because the judge found you to be unreasonable. I think one of the most important things Kate told me when I started the family law practice was the hardest thing you're gonna have to do is tell people no, right? And when you learn to empathize with them, engage, with them, what the system can provide them with, what is our actual goal here? Saying no is tough, but it sure makes the rest of the attorney-client relationship a lot more peaceful. Because they know, I've got their back. Clients, we're always, a team. We want to make an informed decision together that's productive for what their goals are.
So you guys have been outside the box thinkers at least in two major ways. Walking away early career to take a year and a half to go live an amazing life, and then starting this thing that's different. But I have found, I should say I have observed, that people who think outside of the box are highly criticized. No one likes it, right? Because it's not the norm. When you guys do Divorce in a Day, you're not representing either side. You are the neutrals trying to help them work through it together. I can't remember the quote, so I won't butcher it, but someone talked about it's very difficult to get somebody to ever agree with something that doesn't help their money. So when Divorce in a Day, you make less, the two of you make less. It's much less, presumably, than a litigated, drawn out divorce. So there are lawyers that do what you do and have been doing it for a long time that go, if this takes off, if people actually work it out with a neutral or two in a day, obviously it's not, there's the day, but it's a process, but it's faster, it's cheaper. Whoa, think of all the money I'm going to lose, right? Have you guys gotten, whether directly, indirectly, any negative feedback from basically from doing something that's cutting edge is maybe not the perfect term, but doing something that's outside the box?
I think so. And right now, I know it's working, right? Because I know how many cases we're bringing in and I see the results, and it's so much better of a practice for me, because at the end of the day, the people walk out the front door saying, yeah, that wasn't really very much fun, but that's the best way to get through a really, kind of bad process. And that almost is invaluable. And the other attorneys, I'm not sure. The thing I get is, does that really work? How many of those cases are you even getting? And I don't care if they want to take and, bill your average case in Arizona, if it's contested, it's $22,500. Divorce in a Day is $5,000. It's a flat fee that includes all the filing service and delivery costs, which are almost $700 or $800 by the time they're all added up. It's very efficient, but you get good results. It's a good practice. And quite frankly, right now, I don't think the family bar is keen to what a smooth operation it can be. I will also say I'm not super scared of anybody stealing our idea or taking this away, because it takes a high degree of communication between Kate and I to really have, and prep work ahead of time to really have a focused and productive mediation. So, two family lawyers can't just hang a shingle and go, all right, we're going to be successful mediators. You really have to have an established dynamic and kind of the same practice mentality of getting people across the finish line. We're solutions oriented, not, oh yeah, let's rehash the reason we're here to begin with. Got to get past that, and that takes high communication.
So, what's the process of the Divorce in a Day versus the cases that you're litigating?
So it's a much more, the Divorce in a Day is a lot more, Chris runs that whole program. And we still, as we sit here, have a 100% success rate on the Divorce in a Day program, 3.5 years in. And we haven't had anybody get through to the end and walk out or back out. It's very communication focused. We start either a group email with everybody. They fill out an inventory. And really what works for that process early on is just really full access to an attorney that's going to help you through. And then we just have it really metered that as soon as you have all these documents to us and you feel comfortable, we set the mediation date.
Because a lot of the work is done ahead of time, right? Like you said, you can't just bring two people in and say, all right, show me everything you got. Let's get the paperwork drawn up. So we do this through a series of worksheets. And I tell people you have basically unlimited communication to the mediators to try to finish these sheets, to tell me how you want your divorce to look. And that's where we really open up that conversation. Okay, I really want to keep the house, says one spouse. And the other spouse says, well, I don't care. I just don't want to pay out any money. Okay, well, what do we have to trade? And I mean, there's such brilliant, I think, when people are allowed to do this to their own devices, right? There's brilliant agreements. One party will keep the 401k, the other party keeps the house, no equalization. They all move forward with their life. And it's done. And if you can walk out of the door saying, that's an agreement I can live with, that's better than you're ever going to get, stumbling out of court after an 18-month or 24-month battle. And that's I think, the really big benefit is you have options.
There are times, I imagine, in divorces where, and I'll use the example you gave, Chris, where both people desperately want the house. And then I imagine the courts probably just sell the house. I don't know what they do with that. But how do you guys handle, I don't know if that's the best example, but where at the beginning of it, there's no creative way out of it. They both care deeply about something, and you have to talk them through it. How does that go? Or is that too hard of a question because it's so vague?
It's not, because we get to rely on the poor options that the court has, because the family court judges are so limited. They're limited on time. They're not going to know anything about your family. And that's the tool that we can use to say, we're going to be creative. And guess what? There's no better. There's only worse options for you down the road. And so no matter what it is, the house, any type of asset, anything that's important. And a little side note, sitting down and taking 10 minutes to listen to someone about why they want fill in the blank will usually, almost every time, result in finding out a really interesting emotional story, or maybe it is a little spiteful because the other person wants it. But you really, if you take the time to unravel what this hard stop is, you can usually solve it, between four people. And we keep them separated. So during the mediation process, they're supposed to arrive in separate cars. We have a nice big office. We have one spouse's wing. Chris works on the other side of the building. I have my setup on my side. And so we're not sitting around a table hashing things out.
Right.
That would not be
Probably not a good plan.
That would not be the appropriate way to do it. And so when Chris talks about communication, if we know ahead of time, the dog, the house, whatever it is the issue, you start with those things and peel back the onion, and we'll usually figure out what's really going on. And there's always a creative solution.
I have two good friends, and they got divorced after, 15 years, and they share the dog. I don't know if that's
People
common
do
or not.
it.
Yeah.
People do that. And we say, people come in and say, I want a custody arrangement for the pet. And we talk them through that. In Arizona, sees pets, they're animals, they're property. They're property with a value. And our dog, and probably your sweet dog, doesn't have a high value. You can't sell that animal. We do deal with sometimes valuable
This morning
animals.
at 4 a.m., I was thinking about selling that animal.
We would pay somebody.
Except that's your last value item, Mark. You're going to need a puppy pretty soon.
But if we have to negotiate, that's true. That's all I got. What a great dog.
I feel like if we got another one, then they would be able to play with each other like
No
kids.
more dogs.
He's like,
No
no dogs.
more
I'd rather
dogs.
have a kid again.
I'm all dogged out. I got to make sure because I'm being intimidated. Do we have questions, Bonnie Blue? Is that all right?
Fun, all right.
We have questions. You guys ready? I don't know
ready.
what these questions are, but I can tell you this. They've made the last two guests cry.
We're prepared.
Where's the tissues?
Tears and swear words is what our office runs on, so we're not afraid of that.
Okay. I just got engaged, been together 2 years, and found out my fiance has a massive amount of debt. I was in shock. On one hand, I want to tell him it'll be okay and we'll get through it. But on the other hand, it'll drastically set back the life I envisioned. Help.
Such a good question. So common.
And I'm glad they're addressing it now instead of 2 years or 20 years from now?
So that could be. It could either be a really great opportunity to get together, make a financial plan, push that wedding out a little bit, and attack the problem. Great. That would be fine. Maybe that fits into their lifestyle. I don't know what kind of income they have or what the plan is. Or it's a really good, because almost everybody these days could benefit from a premarital agreement, prenuptial agreement. Arizona has a set of rules. If you want to change those rules, get a prenup. There's nothing wrong with that. Debt is a really good one. If someone owns a business, if one spouse owns a settled, successful business prior to marriage, maybe you want to consider keeping that a premarital asset. That situation is absolutely...
Why'd you look at me? It's too late. We already found out it's
too
too
late. The husband and wife law team.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, like, is not getting married to this guy who didn't tell you that he's way in debt an option?
Yeah, that's one of the... We're posing it to
I
all
was
of you.
saying
That
that's
is
an
a good
option.
point. How did she find this
Like,
out? And what
wouldn't
else
you
is
have
he hiding?
known, you know?
I mean, right. If she found it out from the girl he's dating on the
Yeah.
side, now we have all kinds of issues.
Yeah,
This
Mark
is
did come
pump
with a
the
lot
brakes.
of debt.
I came with a lot of debt that you knew about. Part of that debt was
True.
your wedding ring.
True.
Couldn't afford it.
And law school, because law school is so expensive.
Absolutely.
So I should have done a prenup, and you should have had to pay all of your law school on your own.
Let me tell you something. So when
I didn't know this.
when we got married,
Like, to me, I always thought prenup was like to protect like what you had, not to like protect from the other person what you don't have. Does that make sense?
It
but now I know.
but does that work? Because if I have debt, which I did, a lot of debt,
a lot of debt.
but it was school. It was mostly just law school, right? Because I paid for law school, I took loans out for law school, so I had huge student loan debt. I mean, her ring was a small piece of it, but listen, that's, you know, a girl like her has to like see the ring and be impressed, because as it was, I was probably a 50-50 proposition. So most of it was this debt. We do a prenup, but any mistake I made anything that happens that I get sued for while we're married, that's part of our marriage, she's still, like, in other words, how does it actually prevent? Oh, because it was a separate debt when I got it.
It would only be those identified
Those,
premarital
right.
debts. So you're absolutely correct. And then, yes, if you are liable for something during the marriage, of course.
Once we're married.
Community.
So all the damage I've done since, you're on the hook regardless.
no,
of your,
I'm just saying, like,
That's
I
right.
could have saved my half and your half of income coming in, which at the beginning was basically zero. So it didn't really matter because we, you know, went out on our own
pretty soon.
pretty soon thereafter. But you would have had to take your money and put it to your debt. You wouldn't have had all my help
What money?
to pay
I
your
haven't
debt.
had money since we got married. The kids
Well,
sometimes ask me,
half
Dad,
that
how
I
much
gave
money do you
you.
have? And I can look them in the eye and honestly say, I have no money. I don't have any money.
That's true.
Sometimes mom gives me money and she's giving me an ATM card with really small limits. I have no idea what money I have. When we bought our first house, we didn't buy our first house. Do you want to
This
know why
is
we didn't buy our
true.
first house?
This is
because
true.
my credit score was so bad, they would have charged us more, for a lot more in interest for me to be on it. Do you know
It
why
wasn't
my
that-
credit score was so
yeah,
bad?
it wasn't that your
because
credit
she
score was that bad.
chose
No.
which things to pay when we
That's
didn't have
not
enough
what
money.
happened. His credit score.
Don't believe this a lie.
His credit score to buy a house was bad because
Yes.
his debt, law school,
Yes.
to income ratio was not great.
Yes, and
because
my-
he owed so much in law school. So when we went to get our first house, they were like, and this was kind of weird, but that's how banks are. But they were like, if you put him on the loan, then we're going to charge you like 3 or 4% more. So he didn't go on the loan because we were like, why go on the loan if you're going to have to
Right.
pay more? But it wasn't because of your credit score in terms of paying stuff. It was because of like the debt to income ratio, which was so expensive. Like it would have been more than any job. Like, I mean, he came out with hundreds of thousands of
I have always
dollars.
suspected, since she controls the money, all the
True.
money, all of it, not just the little, not just the trust account, not just the capital account, all the money. She controls everything. But because
By the way,
of that,
I still have that house.
yes.
that is only
Did
in
you
my
hear,
name.
Did you hear that pronoun? I still have
I was
that
going
house.
to say, who's on the deed is really the more
I was
relevant
gonna
question.
say, not only am I the only one on the deed, but the bank made him sign off that he was not going to be on the
community
deed.
rights.
Mark
His
signed a
community
disclaimer
rights.
deed.
I did.
Except you're out of luck because Arizona has a case on point that he would be entitled to a community lien because your marital funds have paid the loan on the house. So sorry
This
to
has been
report.
my favorite moment of any podcast.
What a
Maybe one
time
of my
to be an
favorite.
Arizona resident.
I'm sorry to report that Mark
Really?
is.
But he waived his rights on the deed.
Apparently
He
not. Our
signed
courts
up.
have seen through the morass.
That's
and they have
right.
But
found.
that also wouldn't be fair because I was on the loan and he wasn't. Like I took all the risks.
Oh, wait. You mean sometimes our court rulings are not fair?
Yes, I'm just saying. I object to that court ruling. No, I'm just kidding. I don't really care.
So do about half the people that get divorced.
Right.
Yeah. But that is the thing about court rulings. Like oftentimes they aren't fair. Injury law too. I mean, you can't, sometimes they're fair on our side, sometimes they're not. But you never know like how the laws are. Many people are like, that's not fair, that's not fair. Like, I agree with you, it's not fair, but that's the law.
And that's the value of divorce in a day, because when people say, this is important to me emotionally, and we can sit back and say, yes, I understand that, I hear you, but here's what the judge would do, so let's cut out that really
is
painful.
Totally.
True.
One person is that judge making
Right.
that very painful decision. And at least you get a jury.
I'm surprised that you
Right.
actually signed. I would have been like, put me on the loan. Like I'm
What
not.
do I care?
I'm just saying.
Surprised you signed.
I would have been like, put me on the loan.
There's no way. Do you know how much more it was going to cost us? We couldn't afford that
That's
house as
true.
it was.
That's true.
So let's just say this. When we made the offer on the house, it was $1,000 less that month, or we could pay another $1,000 if the seller waited a month, because we had no money left anywhere. We didn't have any. I don't know if our bank account had $10 in it. Our every last dollar went out. There was no way my ego of being on the house. Why? You were stuck with me at that point. No way. You were at the time we bought the house. You were super pregnant with kid number 2. You had kid number 1. Where were you going?
And we were working together.
Yeah, like
You're in.
Yeah,
We were in.
She was fully
Do we
committed.
have
at
another
that point.
question?
We do, but I had a different question than this
Okay.
question, because I'm actually really curious. You guys, especially, I guess you, Kate, more, but both of you guys have been doing family law combined for like a gazillion years. Have you ever had a client who was like, what I really want you to do is help me not get this divorce? Has anyone ever been like, I really don't want to do it, can you save me? Have you ever sat there and divorced in a day and someone's like, what I really want is no divorce in a day?
Not divorced in a day, but you're talking about somebody who personally doesn't want the
Yeah, yeah.
divorce. Yeah, that comes up in consults. But the bottom line is the dollar. So Arizona has kind of a poor system of this conciliation services where you can put a stay on your case if you feel there's a possibility of reconciliation. But that can be, only one person needs to petition for the divorce. The other person can say they don't want it. We can drag it out a while, but
it's
what's
gonna
the
happen.
value?
There was one mediation. I didn't mean to interrupt. There was
No.
one mediation we did earlier this spring where the parties, it was very efficient. They were probably done by 11 o'clock. It was a very, very easy, amicable case. And I was working with the husband. Kate was working with the wife. And husband asked me, can I go talk with my wife? I said, well, I don't know. Let me just check. And she says, yeah, sure, no problem. And they were in there. They're talking. 10 minutes goes by, 15 minutes goes by, 20 minutes goes by. I'm like, what
Is it all falling apart?
What are we gonna do?
Right.
And they walk out and they say, all right, all that paperwork we just did, how about you just hold that for a little while? So we did that. And about 4 weeks later, they said, okay, actually go ahead and file it. We're ready to finish. But no, that almost happened. I was like,
Well, I have to say
That's fun.
that speaks. Obviously, it didn't work out in the long term, and it probably wasn't going to. And I don't know the story behind the story, but it's a nice story of two people trying to
sure
give it
was.
one last shot.
That's right. We have people try to reconcile and things, or people get remarried.
Yeah, I just in that
Go back, like get divorced. And there's this TikTok stuff going around, and it's like, I spent $100,000 in my divorce only to get remarried
Yes, I've
to
seen
each
those.
other again.
I just read
which
that.
is
I
like,
read
oh my gosh.
I've divorced the same couple twice.
I thought it was 3.
Was
They-
it amicable the
married
first time through?
Not the first, then the second, they're like, oh, we've been through it. And then
Here's
they were
the
thinking
paperwork.
about getting remarried again. Yeah.
Are they really?
It was just kind of a toxic love, like you think of like picture like rock stars who are just so emotional all the time, up, down, hot, cold. And
No,
I talked to-
we've seen these relationships on the Jersey Shore episodes.
I talked to someone the other day. They were high school sweethearts. They were together from like 18 to 25, married. They got divorced, and now they're like in their 40s, 50s, and they're back together.
Did they take a 15-year break, or they're back together and they only took a few years off?
No, they divorced at 25, went separate ways, had kids, and then, 15, 20 years later. And then it was funny because she was telling me how
Oh, wait, this was actually a conversation you were having?
Yeah, a real
I just
conversation.
assumed in your life it was a TikTok.
No, not TikTok. It's a real conversation. And when I was talking to the woman and the guy were there, and the woman was telling me how her kids were like, oh, that's the guy you always talked about. And yeah, isn't that funny? But I guess.
Really, I feel threatened by that story.
Check those DMs.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's a whole different story. All right, listen, guys. Thank you for sharing not only the story behind it. I feel a little bit inspired and a little bit sad. Inspired and sad by the fact that I never did a year and a half with no obligations and just enjoying life. I can't even imagine. You imagine that, just enjoying life with me for a year and a half?
The thing about that is, I think you would love that. When I do nothing on a Saturday afternoon, I'm like going crazy. Like, I feel like I'm so unproductive.
I got in so
but
much
he would
trouble.
love it. Yeah, he gets in trouble. I'm like, you didn't do anything all day. It's
I had a
like,
college football Saturday recently where I watched football for about 12 hours because the games ended, or it would have been longer than 12 hours. But
it
anyway,
was
I
like
watched
10 to 10. 10 in the morning, and he came up at
9
like
to 9. I came up at 9 because
10 at
I'm a
night.
loving husband and I didn't want to leave her there all night. So, and there was no late games that I had to see. So anyway, the next day she was like so frustrated by her day because she got nothing done. And I can't relate to that at all. You just had 12 hours to do anything you want with.
I know.
We should
But
buy
I think
a boat.
that's pretty
We could-
cool. I would
Yeah.
love to be able
Ooh, maybe
to
we can
feel
go on a
that way.
boat
Yeah.
with college football streaming to it.
they have
I
that.
like your thing. This is
I mean, this is
brilliant.
That's like
Brilliant.
your tailgating van.
but a tailgating boat.
Yeah.
See, that's a whole new level.
We need that.
I'm glad we did this podcast.
You're right. We're on to something. What you guys are doing is awesome. You guys get to impact a bunch of people. Meeting another couple that works together is always nice. And to hear it's the similar experiences are also very cool.
Where does somebody go to get a divorce in a day?
Yeah, how do they find you?
The audience who's looking. Do you guys have a website, a phone number? Where?
Yeah, it's SimmonsLawGroup.com. You literally can type in "divorced in a day" in Google, and that will bring up all the search cues, explanations about the program. And Barbara's always available 8 to 5 to answer the call. And if I'm not in a meeting or another consult, I always will just take the cold calls to explain to people how the program works, what the parameters are, timelines, all those kinds of things, and make sure they're a good fit for it.
That
Very
is awesome.
cool.
All right. That's
question.
it for
Thank
the Law and Love podcast with people who know law, love, and when the love goes sideways.